Wilds of Eldraine draft season was a fun one here on the channel, and new Wilds of Eldraine draft content has unfortunately come to an end, but that doesn't have to mean that Wilds of Eldraine limited content has to end as well. Over the course of this format, I ended up doing 33 total drafts and earning a 7-win trophy in 9 of those drafts, putting my trophy rate at 27% to go along with my 62% game win rate over the life of the format. So I thought, what would be a more fun way to close out such a successful format here on the channel than with a little top 8 of my best draft decks over the course of Wilds of Eldraine. Of those 9 trophies, I've chosen my 8 favorite decks to battle it out in a single elimination best of 3 top 8 tournament, and after 7 videos over the course of the next 7 days, we will be able to crown what was my best drafted deck in Wilds of Eldraine. Now, to help me with this tournament, I've enlisted the assistance of longtime viewer and patron of the channel, Ruben, to act as my opponent for each of these 7 matches. And today we will be starting with me playing Sultai Ramp, which was a draft live streamed to the channel on September 21st. This deck was the only base blue-green deck I had in the format that got to play with the multi-format all-star Up the Beanstalk. It's another base blue-green deck that ran 3 copies of Brave the Wilds, among other fixing, to splash a Candy Grapple, a Greta, and the adventure half of Mosswood Dread Knight. And speaking of bombs, this deck also had plenty. Ruben will be piloting the first of 2 Rakdos Aggro decks in this tournament, and this one relied a lot more on a low curve than straight power. It was draft number 2 posted to the channel, and it's a simple deck that features a couple of Grand Ball Guests, a couple of monstrous Rages, and managed to finish things off with either a Bargained High-Fey Negotiator or a Song of Totentans. Drop a comment down below to let me know which deck you think will come out on top, and I'll see you in the match. Alright, welcome into the matches, and today I will be piloting Sultai Ramp here, going second with an awkward hand, once again commentating afterward again. This will be the last video that I have to do this for, but don't worry, everything will be just fine. So we've got Hatching Plane, Stormkeld Prowler, and Lagoon Breach here, and Tempest Heart Adventure, which is why I choose to keep this. And then we managed to draw the green and the black source on turn 1. Never didn't have it, right? So let's see what Ruben can pull out here. Got a Grand Ball Guest on 2. Now my question is, do I hold up something else or just play a blocker? And against an aggro deck, I think it's most important to get a blocker down. Looks like he might be slightly color screwed here. Got 3 forests. We know he's playing red-black, so no mountains. Oh, 3 forests. 3 mountains, but no swamps yet. Down goes our only blocker here. Notably, does still have priority with 1 mountain, which could mean one of those 2 copies of Monstrous Rage. It could mean Torch the Tower. I don't know exactly if this deck is running one of those. I may have mentioned it in yesterday's quarterfinal 1, but while we do kind of have access to each other's deck lists during this, neither of us are referencing those deck lists during the games. That just kind of defeats the fun of it necessarily. We're just playing the decks against each other, and you know, I have a mild knowledge of what's in his deck, and he has the deck list that I am playing, so he's seen it as well. But we're not using that information to make decisions here. So it looks like I passed the turn attempting to hold up the Horned Lockwhale activation. He does get a treasure here. Attacks with Ballgast, and I do go for Lagoon Breach on Ballgast. Let's see if this... I'm sure it will resolve. I'm just wondering in what capacity here. Chooses to put it on the bottom. Fine by me. Now we've got some awkward mana considerations to make. We could return from the wilds. There you go, proving he put it on the bottom there. He is color screwed. So I could play Return from the Wilds. I could also just play Tempest Heart as a creature, as a blocker. I lose access to the Adventure, but the Adventure half is not the powerful part of that card. Honestly, no part of that card is particularly powerful, but it is what it is. So I'm making my decision here, pointing out that I could do a couple different things, but we're going to go ahead and just play the blocker. Going against a color-screwed aggro deck, getting a creature down on the battlefield seems relatively important. Now, I'm suspect of Monstrous Rage, so if he attacks here with Red Cap Thief, I probably cannot block with Tempest Heart, as the Monstrous Rage would eat it. So let's see if he does choose to attack. Looks like he does. So, pointing out that Monstrous Rage is likely the thing, pointing out that he had Treasure last turn and Priority, which makes me put him on Monstrous Rage here. So we're going to go ahead and declare no blocks. Did manage to find the swamp. Let's see what he can do with it. Some tough decisions. All of these games, you'll notice, have tough decisions in them. I mean, they're in both incredibly good decks for a reason. I mean, they all trophied in the Premier Draft queue. So he is making his decisions on how he wants to go about deploying his threats here. Alright, and he will go ahead and just make the 2 rats here. At sorcery speed, likely no reason to do that at instant speed. He could have got the celebration, but it doesn't really do anything with me having a 3/4. So I'm going to go ahead and cast Return from the Wilds. Take a look at the board. I don't need mana, so I go ahead and just get the creature and the food, and then looking at Balloonist Gatekeeper versus Hatching Plans, and I do decide to just get rid of the Ballgest right now here. And no reason to attack. We've got a bunch of fat creatures coming, so could just hold all of this back. And through no fault of Ruben's at all, we look like we might have already secured this game. We've got a Horned Lockwhale next turn, a Balloonist Gatekeeper next turn. He does have a Monstrous Rage in hand, which we know about. And I make some math errors here. For some reason, I think it gives +2/+0 or +2/+1, and obviously the Monstrous Rage will trade with Tempest Heart here. Kind of pointed that mistake out as it happened, but it was just a little bit of a math error on my end. But it's okay. We did get the Rage out of the hand, which is important. There is the Rage, putting it up to a 4/2. Clearing off the board just a bit. Grand Ballgast coming down and passing. Now, do I want to try to get value off of the Mosswood Dread Knight here, or would I rather just play one of these big creatures? And I do opt for just playing the big creature. Against these kind of decks, especially a big creature with Ward 2, makes things quite difficult for him to get through here. So he attacks with both creatures, and I'm kind of confused here. I can't figure out what that would be, so I call the bluff on the Red Cap Thief. And let's see if that ends up being the right call here. Okay, so Red Cap Thief hits Horned Lock Whale. We take 2. Could very easily just be trying to push some extra damage here. He probably realizes with all my big creatures, every point of damage is probably going to matter. He does know his deck list before going in as well. He does know he has Song of Totentan, so getting my life total as close to 0 as possible might be relatively important. However, we did talk about this moment after these games. Ruben unfortunately missed the Ward 2 on Horned Lock Whale when attacking there, and had Cut in his hand at this moment. And unfortunately there is 5 mana on the other side of the battlefield, so Cut in costs 4. The Ward 2 would make it cost 6. So his plan was to cut in the Horned Lock Whale post-combat. Would that have changed his decision if he had remembered the Ward 2? Possibly, but I mean, we wouldn't have a Horned Lock Whale, he would have a Cut in. We would also still have a Balloonist Gatekeeper. We would have a 3/3. We'd be drawing 3 more cards here. You know, at the end of the day, even though it was a little bit of a punt there, I think our deck still outlasted just about everything that he could throw at us this game. So, probably wouldn't have made that play. But again, I mean, look at our hand. There's effectively no way that this Sultai deck, in this current situation, really loses this game. So, again, we draw an extra 3 or 4 cards, get an extra 3/3, figuring out what to do here with 4 mana. I've got Mosswood Dread Knight plus the creature, or Dread Knight and the Territorial Witchstalker, or the Tracker as well, drawing an extra card. I mean, you see the power of these blue-green soup decks here, and it is going to plan. So we'll go ahead and play the Dread Knight, threaten to trade with the Ballgast here. That's the reason I played this one, because if the Ballgast does celebrate, we can still trade with it. Looks like our island does get grappled here. I choose not to attack because, again, I've got so much power and toughness coming. There's really no need to. He is flooding kind of a little bit for a 16 land deck, 16 land aggro deck over there. But I think this game was relatively over about 6 turns ago. Well, 6 turns was like turn 0, but about three or so turns ago. So now you see him make the cut-in play because he can pay for the Ward 2 now. So he basically accidentally threw away a Red Cap Thief to push 2 more damage, which, look, it looks like a bad decision in the moment, but like I said, look at our hand. It's probably still good. Our deck has done enough here, so we have basically turned the corner and are now turning into the aggressor here. And the only card I can think to possibly get him out of this is Song of Totentans, and that may not even do it. So let's see what he's got here. He's got the Virtue of Courage, which, when I played this deck on the channel, I didn't put that in for the other side. I put that in for the Embereth Blaze side, which is a fine card to be running. So then he already used that side. So here comes the Virtue. Probably doesn't have much better things to do. Just going to go ahead and play the Virtue. We draw more action. We can animate our cottage. We could play an Archive Dragon. We can Edgewall in. I accidentally made the misclick mistake of putting that on white for some reason. I think I meant to put it on blue and I just didn't. Put down the Gatekeeper over the dragon here. It represents more damage, so that basically closes out the game next turn, as opposed to in like 2 turns, so I'm giving him fewer draw steps here. Currently have lethal. There I am looking at it like, why did I do this on white? Looking at my graveyard, I'm like, there's no white cards. I think it was, well, I know it was just a misclick, meant to do that on blue, but it's okay. Alright, Virtue of Courage, best bargain fodder in the set? Look, we even have Extraordinary Journey. We've got just about everything we need here. So, go ahead and cast the Dread Knight, play the land, cast the dragon so that our Witchstalker can attack here, get another food, and like I mentioned, the writing was kind of on the wall with this one. We just had an incredible draw, and he kind of flooded just at least a little bit. But we do have lethal here next turn. So that will put us into game 2 here. And like I mentioned in yesterday's video, and if I didn't, we are playing these matches out in the best of 3 format just to eliminate any sort of mana screw, mana flood feel bads for any of these decks here. We want to try to give them the best ability that they have to succeed. Now, we're not playing with sideboards, we're just playing with the 40 cards that I used on the channel when these decks were originally posted. So we're getting into game 2 with the same decks here. We're going on the draw again, and we've got all of our colors. So we're going to keep it. I don't think it's worth holding on to Brave the Wilds as bargain to do the hatching plants here. So I'm just going to use it now. Go get the swamp so that we can cast the adventure half of Mosswood Dread Knight next turn, if we wanted to. Another Ballgast on 2. Looks like we will just go ahead and fire off that card draw here. And if we can find a way to make it to 5 or 6 mana, we've probably got this one in the bag, but let's see if we can get there. Okay, Celebration with 2 rats, hit us for 3. And I could play Dread Knight, and I do. Just looking to play Dread Knight to trade with this Ballgast here, basically. Next turn, if we draw an island, we can do Hatching Plans and the adventure half of Obear's Attendants, or the adventure half of Horned Lockwhale, or both. But we do need to draw an island for that, so let's see what we can find. Four mana over there. Witch's Mark. Likely plus Ratcatcher Trainee to celebrate here. And attack past our Dread Knight, which does not feel the best. So there he goes. Go down to 12. Draw a tap land. So we're going to go ahead and play that because it's basically... We can still only single spell here, so... We're going to decide between whether we want to use adventure half of Obear's Attendants or Horned Lockwhale here. It's going to depend on what he does. Raid Bombardment. That makes things very difficult, because now he's swinging for a lot of damage. Here comes everything. He's still got priority, which could mean Monster's Rage, so... This one looks to have kind of gotten out of hand here. So, how do we do this? Looks like we block a rat. Try to keep the creature around. He does have Sugar Rush. Now, I could use one of these two things on the rat, but the problem is if I do that, I go to 3, and then I'm dead on board next turn. So I unfortunately have to let that resolve and then cast Lagoon Breach on the Grand Ballgast here to prevent as much damage as I can. Ballgast goes to the top as yet another threat. Dread Knight is traded with. We are down to 5. And a return from the wilds. Does that do much? Gives us a 1/1 to trade. I probably don't want to draw the card off of Dread Knight, but I think I kind of get into a little bit of a desperation play here and do that anyway, and accidentally misclick, unfortunately, because I meant to do the human in the food, and now I just leave myself dead on board, which, a little bit of a misclick, obviously. So we are dead, but we were dead in many various ways there, either way. So again, mistakes not really having a result, or not really causing the result of any of these games here. We're basically just, you know, playing these out, and these mistakes, even though they're happening, they're not impacting the result of these games. So we do get to go first here in game 3. Brave the Wilds on 1, Spell Stutter for his first place. Seems like a decent little keep to me. So let's do that. We'll go ahead and get the swamp, as we still do have 2 islands here. Hopeless Nightmare on 1. Awkward for us, but we will get rid of the land. Then we'll play the island and hold up Stutter here. Hopeless Nightmare. Is that counterable? I think it is. He probably doesn't have another play. So we're just going to prevent some of the damage and counter that here. He does have another play. But it's not an entirely relevant one. So let's see. Only thing we can do is cast the adventure half of Tempest Heart here now. So let's see if we choose to do that. I'm not actually sure I've ever done that in this entire format. Is cast the Frantic Search half of Tempest Heart. Here comes the 1/1. Don't feel like using Lock Whale on that. And I will fire off the Frantic Search, or Scan the Clouds. And we're left with an awkward decision here. And we get rid of the dragon because that one doesn't have an out to be able to be cast for cheap. Whereas the Lock Whale does have a version that we can cast it for cheaper. So we're going to drop our 3/4. And potentially have it die to Candy Grapple. Let's see. No. Okay. 4 lands over there. Looks like he must have just top decked it, unfortunately for us. So Tempest Heart down. The good news is he's not putting a ton of pressure on us right now, so we are kind of drawing out of this a little bit. No post-combat play, so we're just going to drop another creature, because it blocks well enough here. And continue to try to stabilize. Again, not having a ton of pressure put on us, which is great for this deck. And that just comes down to the draws here. So, Rat out, probably plus Candy Grapple to get rid of our creature, I would think. Plus Frantic Firebolt. Okay. And he couldn't have done the Firebolt first because the Rat out had to go to the graveyard in order for that to work out. So, we are drawing pretty well here, though. We're just drawing Troyan and more action. So, we're doing the best we can as far as our draws go. High Fate Negotiator bargaining the rat. Alright. Sure, go to 11. Go to my turn, draw a Mosswood Dread Knight. So, debating casting the Lock Whale or something, but we are going to cast the Dread Knight here. And then we still have kind of 3-ish mana. So we're just going to Brave the Wilds, or... Let's see. We don't have access to double green. Yet. Unless we Brave the Wilds for a forest. Which it looks like is the line I take here. Get that forest, play the forest, cast the Dread Knight, and then still have loot up? Or would I rather... I'm pointing out here, I could cast Lagoon Breach on the Negotiator. But that's not a card I really want them casting again. However, I do pass the turn, so it looks like that is my plan here, is to Lagoon Breach their Negotiator, and now a Raid Bombardment. So we are on the back foot. Here comes Negotiator, and we will, for some reason, click through combat. I'm going to go ahead and send that back to the top of the library. And in order for him to have bargain fodder for the Negotiator now, he has to bargain away the Raid Bombardment, which would be good for us. So I do go ahead and just... Well, I remember that I can use Troion to cast these things as well. So we do that, play Lock Whale, and then play Dread Knight here. Now we're getting our creatures down, so we can potentially turn into the aggressor. However, if he does choose to bargain the bombardment away, we are at 7 with the 3/5 flyer on the other side. And that is what he does. He doesn't have great attacks, so just putting us to 7 here. We don't have bargain fodder for that grapple just yet, but we did draw a pretty good blocker. So go to combat first, attack with the whale. See if he chooses to chump. Probably not yet, he's at 26. Wouldn't really see a reason to do that. And then we're going to leave up Candy Grapple mana here. And then find a couple things we just don't really need. So we're going to send those to the bottom. And end the turn. Now we can use Candy Grapple to take down Negotiator if he were to attack. But if he doesn't have any tricks or anything, he doesn't have the ability to attack. We have drawn incredibly these past few games, including as well yesterday. Like, if we hadn't drawn that Archive Dragon, we'd be at 4 now. So pretty good draw on our end. Looks like he's flooding a bit, unfortunately. So I go to combat, I just get in with the Lock Whale. I'm at 7, I don't feel the need to risk my life total too much by attacking with Dragon 2. So we go to damage, he goes to 14. And for some reason... Okay, so we are just going to get the Glutton down. Get another big fat creature, gain some life, and again, these big fat creatures, if you can stabilize to the point where you can cast them, usually that's good enough. Okay, double rat. And trainee itself. And then likely pass it back. We have stabilized the board on our side here. Go ahead and get the human, get the food, buff up our life total a little bit more. And in we get with our 6/6s. Makes the logical block here to chump that one and take 6. And rather than play the Stormkeld Prowler, I'm just going to hold up a Food and Candy Grapple. His deck does play Song of Totentans, but unfortunately it just looks like he's flooding a little bit here, and that happens. But you know what? Really good, well-fought matchup from both players in both decks here, but the power of this Sultai Ramp deck and the power of these late-game decks is not to be denied. So now we get to have a little bit of fun with Extraordinary Journey if we wanted to. Could do it for like 4 or I don't even know, but at the end of the day, I think we just have lethal on board here. So I think I'm just going to do it for 1. Get rid of his only blocker. And Sultai Ramp takes down Rakdos Aggro in quarterfinal 2 in a well-fought matchup. Thanks again, Ruben, for joining me for these matchups. Sultai Ramp will move on to take on Teamer Adventures in the updated bracket on your screen now. Tune in tomorrow for quarterfinal 3, where you will see, trying to remember which deck. So I think we got Gruul midrange. You can remember better than I do. Gruul midrange versus 4-color controls, which you'll see tomorrow. And semifinals 1 in a few days here over the next 5 or 6 days to see the rest of this tournament. I hope you're enjoying this tournament. Thanks for tuning in today. Tune in back tomorrow to catch the remainder of the tournament, and I'll see you later for more daily draft tournament content.